Welcome to our class on Chassidus. This week, since we are celebrating Pesach Sheini, we are going to be learning a very special Hasidic discourse from the Rebbe. It's actually the only Hasidic discourse of the Rebbe on Pesach Sheini. The Rebbe actually said this Hasidic discourse in Tafshin Lamed Ches, which is 42 years ago, and it was edited 11 years later in Tafshin Mem Tes, so that's 31 years ago. It's a classic Chassidus discourse, and the Rebbe begins the discourse by saying, "L'ahavin Inyan Pesach Sheini." We have to understand the idea behind Pesach Sheini. So the question is, what does that mean? We have to understand the Inyan, the idea behind Pesach Sheini. So I just want to give an introduction, and based on the Torah where it describes Pesach Sheini. So first of all, we all know that when the Jewish people left Egypt, so it says clearly, "V'chamushim b'mnei Yisrael all Mitzrayim," that only 1/5, or one opinion, even 1 out of 500 went out of Egypt. But you see clearly when it came to going out of Egypt, not everybody left Egypt. That's point number one. Point number two, when it came to celebrate the Karban Pesach, so it says specifically that there were rules. Who can participate, who can't. If you were spiritually impure, you could not participate in the Karban Pesach. So what happened was, as the Torah tells us in Parshas Bamidbar, the Jewish people that were impure came to Moshe Rabbeinu. They said, "Listen, we want to partake in the Karban Pesach, and unfortunately we're impure and we cannot partake. Lama Negara, why should we be left out?" So Moshe Rabbeinu says, "Fine, good request. I'll ask Hashem." Hashem comes back and Hashem says through Moshe Rabbeinu, and he says that those that are impure, and that was the original request, but then Hashem adds, Oy b'derech, or if they were on the road, means they physically could not be there. And then the verse says rechoika. Now if you give a look in the word rechoika, on top of the hey, the last letter of rechoika, there's a dot on top. The commentaries, for example, the Cheskoini says that rechoika, because it's a dot, it's separated from a derech. It doesn't mean a person was on a faraway road. But derech, that's one issue. But the second issue is rechoika. He's far away, and he says specifically someone that's far away from Judaism, someone that's far away. And he says either lachem or l'deresechem, either then or what happens after a long period of time, people can become despondent and they can lose their connection with Hashem. Rechoika, they're disconnected. So nevertheless, they are included as well in participating in the Karban Pesach Sheini. So here you see there's a major difference between the first Pesach and the second Pesach. In the first Karban Pesach, the 14th of Nisan, not everyone's accepted. Not everyone can participate. But when it comes to Pesach Sheini, everybody can participate. Whether the person is holy, not holy, pure, impure, a person behaves, doesn't behave, a person follows Hashem, a person sins, Rechoika, he's far away from Judaism. Everybody's accepted. So Pesach Sheini says, as we know, the famous Hayom Yoin, the Rebbe says, Nishtakim Farfalim, there's nobody that's left out. Everybody's accepted. So Pesach Sheini, everyone's accepted. A novel idea. So the Rebbe says, L'ahavin Inyan Pesach Sheini. We have to understand, wow, what's this Pesach Sheini all about? That everybody's accepted. It's a new policy in Judaism. Judaism always says, no, if you're pure, you can bring a sacrifice. If you're not pure, you can't. And everything else that comes with it. And here we say, no, Pesach Sheini, everyone's accepted. Not necessarily a way that we see in the Torah, where the Torah is full of rules and disciplines and law and order. So the Rebbe says, L'ahavin Inyan Pesach Sheini, we have to understand what's this whole idea of Pesach Sheini. The Rebbe sets out over here a beautiful, classical, Hasidic insight into Pesach Sheini, which I think once we learn it, we'll have a whole new perspective in how we could literally accept every single person, how we can love everybody, how we can be unified with everybody. And when we love everyone and we unified with everyone, we'll see in the Smayim where the Rebbe says, this is what it's going to be like when Mashiach comes. We can literally experience what's going to be like when Mashiach comes now if we are willing to learn this discourse, learn what it means, what really Pesach Sheini is all about, follow the practical guide of the Rebbe points out in this Hasidic discourse how to have true love for everybody. We will merit to be living today with tasting a little bit when Mashiach comes, and hopefully we'll all merit to the great revelation when we'll really be unified, not only spiritually but physically, with all unfortunate people that passed away, whether it was a long time ago or recently, and all the pain that people are going through, will be reunited in a beautiful way. So obviously this is a very, very powerful discourse, and the Rebbe begins and he says that in order to understand Pesach Sheini, we have to understand, and 3 introductions the Rebbe gives, based on a Hasidic discourse from the Tzemach Tzedek. And the Tzemach Tzedek says that there are 3 differences between the first and the second Pesach. So I'm going to tell you an outline of this chapter, and I'll give you an outline before each chapter, and we'll go into each chapter in depth. So the first thing the Rebbe says that there's a major difference between the first Pesach and the second Pesach, whereas in the first Pesach, think about the Jewish people. Where were they? They were in Egypt. They were in Memteh Sharei Tumah. They were all in a very, very unholy place. They were disconnected from God. They were in a tremendous place of impurity. The only thing they had to do was, and they could do, was Sur Meirah. They were in such a bad place, they had to run away from evil. Spiritually, the avodah is called iskafia. In other words, we're involved in evil, we're involved in negativity, but we're not ready to totally throw it all away. Iskafia, we practice restraint. And then the Rebbe is going to, the second idea the Rebbe is going to explain to us is that in Yetzias Mitzrayim, the connection that we had with Hashem, we know in the Sfirot, even though it starts in the top, Chabad, the intellect and the emotions, then Malchus, but because we're becoming anew, we can't start on the top. So in Kabbalah it says we started from Malchus. We worked our way up from the bottom, from accepting God as a king. Then we worked to Yesod, a bonding relationship with Hashem, and then into the emotions and into intellect. That's happened later on when we receive the Torah and so on and so forth. So Yetzias Mitzrayim is our first connection to the first sphere of Malchus, and obviously our relationship with Hashem was one of Yiras Hashem. However, Pesach Sheini is the level of what? Of Asei Toiv, because already now we want to do good. The proof is we came to Hashem and we came to Moshe and said, Lama Nigara, we want to have a positive relationship with Hashem. Also, you have the idea of Hisapcha, where you're totally transformed, and we reached already the next sphera of Yesod, and then obviously we reached a level of relationship with Avas Hashem. So that's the first chapter. We're going to go into it in depth. So the Rebbe explains again the first difference between between the first Pesach and the second Pesach, and he said he's going to explain it by avodas ha'adam, meaning to say is that when we have a relationship with Hashem, one of the gifts of mysticism is that we have to work on ourselves. We have to transform ourselves. So we know that there's 2 different avodas. There's a avodah of Sur Meirah, and there's a avodah of Asei Toiv. There's a avodah of Iskafia, and there's a avodah of Isapcha. So in the month of Nisan, what was our avodah? We had to work on Sur Meirah. It's bad, go away. We're not holding where we have to start embracing good, even though that's great. But the avodah of Nisan is Sur Meirah, going away from evil. The avodah is Iskafia, just practice restraint. Don't engage in something which is not appropriate. And then we have the avodah of Chodesh Iyar, which is the month that Pesach Sheini is in. Avodah of Chodesh Iyar already is all about doing good. And as we see unique, the month of Iyar is the only month of the whole Jewish calendar that every single day there's a positive mitzvah. Every day we count the Omer. Every day we're becoming closer to Hashem by refining our midot in a beautiful way, which that basically is called the avodah of Ishapcha. So that is again the first difference between the first and the second Pesach. The first one is Sur Meirah, Iskafia, and by Pesach Sheini is Asei Toiv and Ishapcha. The second difference. So, as we mentioned before, in the Sfirot, generally it's Keser or Chachma Bina Das, the intellect down to the emotions, down to Malchus. But because we're becoming a people, so we have to start from the bottom. So the avodah of the first Pesach of Chodesh Nisan is the avodah of Malchus. We're accepting God as a king. And the second difference is that the month of Iyar already is Yesod. Yesod means we're bonding. We're creating a bonding relationship with Hashem. So the dominant force in Yetzias Mitzrayim, Chodesh Nisan is Malchus, and the dominant force in Chodesh Iyar is already, we're building up to the level of Yesod. So that's the second difference between the first Pesach and the second Pesach. And then the Rebbe goes on to say there's a third. There's another difference, and which actually before we go into the third difference, the Rebbe says the first and the second differences are connected, because the Rebbe says you find by the Shvatim that it says that they when they were in the field, they were obviously working on what? On elevating holy spark. So it says that by the regular Shvatim, the 11 Shvatim, their avodah was what? Bittul Hayesh. They basically humbled their self. Notice they still had a self. They weren't willing to give up self. Their self, their yesh, they were batal, which is the avodah of Iskafia, which is connected to the idea of what? Of Malchus. However, we know Yosef was Yosef Atzadik, and Yosef Atzadik is the midah of Yesoid, and Yosef is already Bittul Metzias, which is his hapcha. So you see there's a connection between Iskafia and Malchus, and Ishapcha and Yesoid, where we see by the Shvatim and Yosef Atzadik. The third difference the Rebbe says is that Pesach is the idea of dilug. What's the idea of dilug? Where you're basically leaping over. What happened by Pesach? Hashem jumped over. Meaning to say is that in the first Pesach, when there was a dilug, when there was jumping over, what was that? That was the idea of Spheres HaMalchus, as we said before, which is Sur Meirah. And which midah is that? That is the midah of Yira. So basically, another difference between the first Pesach, by the first Pesach, it was Dilug that got us into the level of Yiras Hashem, and then the second Pesach, which basically is the sphere of Yesoid, which is a connection, and that's Ishapcha, and that's when we create a loving relationship with Hashem. So again, there's three major differences between the first Pesach and the second Pesach, which is basically avodah of Chodesh Nisan and Chodesh Iyar. And again, just to recap, that the first avodah and the first Pesach, which is basically Chodesh Nisan, is Sur Meirah and Iskafia, and in the Midos it's Malchus, and in the actual practical it's Yiras Hashem. And the second Pesach is Asay Toiv and Ishapcha. The Midah is Yesoid, and it leads into Avas Hashem. That's the basic difference between what the first Pesach and the second Pesach. Now, so the Rebbe says now, we're going into the second ois, the second chapter of this Ma'amad. The Rebbe says, so what happens like this? We're going to focus now on the second Pesach. What's the second Pesach? The second Pesach is about Ishapcha, Asay Toiv, and Avas Hashem. Now, what happens when we're focused on Asay Toiv, we're focused on just doing good, and when we're focused on just creating a Yesod, a bonding relation with Hashem, we have Avas Hashem, then we reach Hashem on a higher level. Now, the Rebbe says the reason why we reach Hashem on a higher level is because we're willing to make the jump. And as we jumped out from the Avodah of Chodesh Nisan, we jumped out of just Sur Meirah. Okay, I'm not going to do anything that's bad. No, I want to do good, and I want to bond, and I want to connect, and I want to have love for Hashem. Then we reach Hashem on a much higher level. Because we reach Hashem on a much higher level, therefore the Gilui, the revelation from Hashem, is much higher in month of Iyar versus the month of Nisan. Why? Because in the month of Nisan we're only Sur Meirah. Okay, we're not going to do anything bad. And we're going to connect to Malchus. Yiras Hashem. So then Hashem already he differentiates. If you want to bring a sacrifice, you have to be pure. If you're not pure, you can't bring. And these people are going out, these people aren't going out. There's a difference because we didn't reach Hashem at a very, very high level. However, when it comes to the second Pesach, when we already jumped out of our being, what do we want? We want to say toiv. We want to focus on doing good. We want to focus on our relationship. Yesod. We want to have a real relationship with Hashem. Lamani gara. We don't want to be left out. We want to have a real relationship. We're coming from a place of Ava. Then what happens is Hashem says, sure, not only am I giving you, accepting you if you're impure, but I'm willing to accept every single one of you. Even if you were out of the way, even unfortunately if you're a sinner, and if you're not behaving, Hashem accepts us all. Why does Hashem accept us all? Because we are creating a loving relationship with Hashem. And then we come to the point where Hashem says, guess what? You're all invited. You're all accepted. There's no rules. Or as the expression in Hayom Yom it says in Yiddish, as Pesach Sheini is nitak came farfallen. It's never too late. Everybody's accepted. Pesach Sheini, everyone's accepted. It's never too late. Why is it never too late? Because we made that tremendous jump. Now the Rebbe is going to explain a pichsidus. We're going to go into a little more Kabbalah here. What happens? Why is it, Taka, that when we make that jump, Hashem is willing to accept and there's no more rules? And the Rebbe says very, very simple. I'll give you an intro and then we'll go into a little more in depth. The Rebbe says because what happens is when we basically jump out and we're focused on Asay Toiv, when we're connecting to Hashem in Yisoid, Lama Nagar, we don't want to be disconnected, we want to be connected, which is the midah of Yisoid, and we create Avas Hashem. The Rebbe says that Yisoid is in the world of Atzilut. And that's point number one, which we'll explain a little more in depth as we go into the Sois. And point number two is that in the world of Atzilus, Yisoid is all about shining light. It's all about light. So when there's light, there's no darkness. And the Rebbe explains like this, that what did we just say? That there's a difference between Yisoid and Malchus. And the Rebbe says that what's the difference between Zah? Now, Zah is actually called Zer Ampin, the small face, which is referring to all the midot. But in there you have the midas HaYisoid, which is part of it. So the Rebbe says, what's the difference between Zah, which is Yisoid is included in that package, and Malchus? The Rebbe says very, very simple. Because we know that in the Sfirot, you have intellect, emotions. Malchus is the last one. In every world, starting with the world of Atzilut, which is totally one with Hashem, to the world of Bria, Yetzira, Asiya, in every world, Malchus is the last Sphira of that world, which really is already starting the process, the connection of the next world. So Malchus on the highest level, even though it's Malchus of Atzilus, is already connected to Bia. Bria, Yetzira, Asira. Zah, on the other hand, even though it's the lower level of the Sirot, but that's still part of Atzilut. Now, since Zah is part of Atzilut, and Yisoid is part of Zah, which is in the world of Atzilut, and we know in the world of Atzilut it says, Lo Yagur Chara. There is no evil. There's no evil in the world of Atzilut. So in other words, since there's no evil, when we're connecting on the level of Yisoid, that is 100% ishapcha. Why? Because it's all about one thing. When a person is connected on the level of Yisoid, the only focus is drawing in light. There's no transformation. They don't see anything negative they have to transform. And a person elevates himself to the month of Iyar, to the idea of Asay Toiv, Lama Nigara, Yisoid, I want to connect to Hashem, Avas Yisrael, true love. Over there's no darkness. You're busy shedding light. So in other words, the avodah of Yisoid is all about shedding light. And the Rebbe brings, actually, it's brought down in Kabbalah, and it says that what's the avodah of Sfiras Omer? The avodah of Sfiras Omer is to draw down the Mem test, the 49 days that we count, 49 Sharei Bina, the 49 gates of Bina, of understanding. And obviously, once we work on bringing more light every day, more light, 49 levels of Bina into our life, then what happens is on the 50th day, we get the 50 as a gift. So the whole avodah of Sfiras HaOmer is about one thing, bringing in light into the world. And Rebbe gives another example. He says that we see that the month of Iyar, which is the second month, which is all about bringing in light, so Iyar stands for Avraham, Yitzchok, Yaakov, and Rachel. The three patriarchs and the one matriarchs. As we know, they are the raglei of the Merkava, the wheels of the chariot, feet of the chariot. With a regel of a chariot, we know that in order for a wheel to be a proper wheel on a chariot, you have to be batal. You have to be totally nullified. Whatever the chariot wants, that's what you do. So the Avos, on a spiritual level, they were the Raglei Merkava, which means they were totally nullified. They were ready to do whatever Hashem wants. There was no room for arrogance. In other words, whatever was Ratzon Hashem, that's what we're ready to do. So you see clearly that the avodah of Iyar is all about bringing in light. A, we saw it in the avodah of bringing in the 49 Sharei Bina, and we get the 50th as a gift. And B, we see in the idea that the Avos, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and Rachel, which is the creation of the Chodesh Iyar, is all about being the chariot, just doing whatever Ratzon Hashem is. And so when a person wants to do Ratzon Hashem, Yisoid, then you're just busy drawing in light. If you're busy drawing in light, you're connecting to the highest places. And it's all about bringing in light. It's all about creating a loving relationship with Hashem. And obviously we can carry it on to other people and other experiences that we're going through ourselves. Now, and the Rebbe goes further and he says like this. And I'll give you an intro to the next paragraph, and then we'll go into it more in depth. The Rebbe says that that's what you see, that since the month of Iyar is all about what? Ishapcha, transformation, Asay Toi, bringing in light. So you see that who is the ones that led the Jewish people and dealt with the Jewish people in reference to the month of Iyar, Pesach Sheini, is all Moshe and Aaron. And we know that Aaron was all about Ishapcha, which we'll soon explain. Moshe was all about Asay Tova, we'll explain. And even the fact that Moshe and Aaron were involved in Yetzias Mitzrayim, Chodesh Nisan, so you're going to say they were involved in the Iskafia too. But the answer is the whole purpose of that Iskafia was so that we should get to the level of Ishapcha to create a pleasure and joy with Hashem. So now a little more in depth. So the Rebbe explains like this, that the month of Iyar is all about Ishapcha. What does Ishapcha mean? No, the Sur Meirah. When you're going away from evil, you're dealing with evil and you're pushing it away. There's a healthy Sur Meirah. A healthy Sur Meirah is Ishapcha. Ishapcha is a healthy Sur Meirah, which means you're just bringing in light into, unfortunately, areas which is dark, but you're not bogged down by the Ra. You're just Ishapcha. You're going on dealing with bringing in light there. And it's all about the idea of Asay Tov. So it says when it came to counting the Bnei Yisrael in the second month, which is the month of Iyar, who counted the Bnei Yisrael? So the Torah says clearly, who counted the Bnei Yisrael? Moshe and Aaron counted Bnei Yisrael. What's the connection of Moshe and Aaron with this whole idea of Ishapcha and Asay Tov? And the Rebbe says very, very clearly, because we all know that Aaron represented Oyev Shalom v'Roidev Shalom. Aaron was someone that ran after peace and he pursued peace. What's the idea of peace? Peace means that you're taking things which chas v'shalom could be negative, people that chas v'shalom could be in a conflict. No, it's all peaceful. He puts people together. He creates shalom. That's the ultimate nishapcha. The ultimate nishapcha is you have two people that possibly can think differently and may act differently, but you create peace. So Aaron was all about the avoid of ishapcha through his mission of shalom. Moshe Rabbeinu, we know, was all about light. Moshe Rabbeinu is one that gave us a Torah. And we know that it says in the Torah that when he was born, so the whole house was full of light. It says they saw that he was good. What do you mean he was good? Because he filled up the whole house with light. So Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron that counted the Jewish people in the month of Iyar both resemble the idea of Ishapcha, and they both resemble the idea of Asay Tov, which is basically bringing in light, which that was the avodah of Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, so the Rebbe says, we find that who took the Bnei Yisrael out of Mitzrayim? Obviously Hashem, but through who? Through Moshe and Aaron. So if they took them out, then they should be more connected to Iskafia or Sur Meirah. And the Rebbe says that the purpose of the Iskafia of going out of Egypt wasn't that we should stay in Iskafia. It wasn't that we should be busy with Sur Meirah. It was just a springboard to get us to the level of what? Ishapcha. And not only Ishapcha, but even the higher level of Asay Tov in elevating the sparks through Asay Tov, not elevating the sparks through Sur Meirah. And the Rebbe says clearly, we find this in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe says that even though a person could be on the level of Al Tehi Rasha, he's on a level where the Tanya said you shouldn't be a Rasha. But the goal is he shouldn't stay on that level that he should be a Rasha. Even someone that's on the level of Rasha, and the Tanya says Al Tehi Rasha, the goal is that he also has to fulfill the oath of Al Tehi Tzaddik. The person that has to fulfill the oath of Al Tehi Rasha, he's not exempt from Tehi Tzaddik, true Al Tehi Rasha, but he also has to fulfill the requirement of what? Tehi Tzaddik, which means practically Ishapcha. What is Ishapcha by being a tzaddik? He has to come to the point where he despises evil. That Ra is something which he despises, it's not him. That's Ishapcha. And the second level he has to reach is Asay Tov. He has to find pleasure and joy in Hashem. How does one come to finding pleasure and joy in Hashem? The Rebbe says very simple. By meditating on the greatness of Hashem, you come to the level of finding joy in avodas Hashem. Now, so we see clearly that the Rebbe says that the goal is to focus on being the avodah of Chodesh Iyar, which is a sabcha, which is asay toiv, which is a level of yisoid, which is a level of ava. We had to run away from evil. That was just a springboard to get us to the level of the asay toiv. That's the focus, and that's what we have to live at, and that's what we have to be at. But the Rebbe says something very, very powerful in the next chapter, chapter 5. The Rebbe says like this: even though our avodah should be Chodesh Iyar, which is all about what? Asay toiv, ishapcha, yisoid, ava. But nevertheless, the compassion and the passion that one has when you're running away from evil, that drive, even though we don't want to go deal with that of Mitzrayim, but nevertheless, that we need to bring that drive with us, the drive that we have. When you're running away from evil, when there's a fire, the energy that we get within us, we have to bring that fire within us in the avodah of Asay Tov as well. And once we bring that fire and passion from running away from Egypt into the avodah of Asay Tov is what? Is much greater. So the Rebbe explains that idea, and he says like this: that obviously we're in the avodah of Chodesh Iyar, and that should really be our avodah, which is all about ishapcha. It's all about, basically, as the Rebbe gave the example from the Avos, be a merkava. We should be a chariot. Meaning to say, what's a chariot? Whatever Hashem wants, hineni, I'm ready to serve you. Whatever is needed. Asay Tov, I love you, Hashem. I'm willing to do whatever's needed. But nevertheless, the Rebbe says we have to bring within us, and with us, the avodah of Yetzias Mitzrayim, which is the passion and the excitement of iskafia. Because why? Because when you're running away from evil, there's a certain fire. And as the Rebbe says clearly, it says that even when Mashiach comes, we're still going to mention going out of Egypt. So the question is, why when Mashiach is coming, who wants to remember going out of Egypt? We remember Teshari Tumah. And the Rebbe says, because the fire and the excitement that we had from running away, that fire we need. Not the evil part, but the fire that we had from running away, that we need even when Mashiach comes. Why? Because the fact is that when we left Egypt, the Torah says, Bichi Pozoin. We left very, very quickly, alacrity. Why? Because we wanted to get out of there. We wanted to go to the Shekhinah. That's something that, unfortunately, where do you get that? When you're going through a soyon, when you're going through a challenge, when you're going out of Mem Tashari Tuma. Or like we say that, for example, where a place where Baal Tshuva is a tzaddik can never be, because the fire that they have is unbelievable. So the goal is to bring that fire into our avodah of Chodesh Iyar. However, even though we have to bring it in, because the fact is like this: when a person is in the avodah of ishapcha, and when a person is avodah of asay toiv, it's a much more calmer avodah. You just focus on the good. You're just focusing on bringing light, and there's no jumping. So we have to bring that jumping part into our avodah. In other words, so what is Pesach Sheini? Very clearly, the Rebbe says Pesach Sheini is our avodah has to be asay toiv. We have to be busy with bringing in light. We have to be busy with love and getting along with everyone and just dealing with positivity. But sometimes we're just doing it too calm. We're lacking the fuel. We're lacking the excitement to do it. So that we have to bring from our old history of going out of Egypt. That's the only thing we bring. Just that power and that energy. And Rebbe quotes actually where Shlomo Melech says, Moshcheni acharecha narutza. So what does the pasuk mean? Moshcheni acharecha, draw me, narutza, and it says plural. So the Rebbe explains what it means very, very simple. Moshcheni acharecha is basically that the godly soul goes ahead and he inspires the animal soul to have a love for Hashem and to cleave to Hashem. And Moshcheni Achrecha means that you're drawing me out. You're drawing out the animal soul to do what Hashem wants, to have a love for Hashem. Then Narutza plural. So even though the godly soul is one that's pulling the animal soul to have a love for Hashem, but then Narutza, we're both going to run. Because the animal soul he's running. He's always busy. He's excited. He's passionate. But unfortunately, in the wrong places. Moshcheni acharecha, the godly soul inspires the animal soul to have avos Hashem, but then narutza, we learn from the animal soul to run in our avos Hashem. And the Rebbe explains the reason why, unfortunately, the first Pesach we can never reach the level of Pesach Sheini because our relationship with Hashem was really motivated by fear. And because it's motivated by fear, it can only go so far. Mashenkin, the second Pesach, Pesach Sheini, what was Pesach Sheini? Bnei Yisrael were bringing the carbon, they were bringing sacrifices, following Hashem Torah mitzvahs, they were learning Torah, doing mitzvahs, asay toiv. So when a person is learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, what are you connected to Hashem? Hashem is infinite. So in first Pesach, because our relationship was Yira, we're running away, we're not really connecting to anything infinite. Mashenkin and Pesach Sheini, when we're connecting Hashem to Torah and mitzvahs, we're connecting to the infinite, we're connecting to Bli Gvul. And once Bli Gvul is revealed, obviously that is much more powerful and much greater. And that's why the Rebbe says, it's interesting is, that we know in Tanya, in the beginning of Tanya, the Tanya begins and he starts speaking about two souls that we each have. What's the first soul, the Tanya says? Our animal soul. What's our second soul? Our godly soul. So the Friedrich Rebbe says that Pesach Sheini, it's a beautiful idea. Pesach Sheini, Pesach, the second Pesach, is connected to our Nefesh HaShenis, the second soul that it talks about in Tanya. In other words, the first Pesach is connected to our first soul, which is our animal soul. Why? Because what happened in Mitzrayim? Mitzrayim, unfortunately, our Nefesh HaBahamis took over. Who was running our life? Our Nefesh HaBahamis. We were in a dark couple of mechupul. It was very dark for us because our animal soul was running the show. So therefore, Pesach, the first Pesach, is more connected to our Nefesh HaRishon that's talking about in time, which is Nefesh HaBahamis. Mashenkein, Pesach Sheini is connected to what? To the Nefesh HaSheinish B'Yisrael, as it speaks about in Tanya, which is our godly soul. And then in the 6th chapter, the Rebbe goes on to explain that Pesach Sheini, not only is it greater than the first Pesach, it's hugely greater than the first Pesach, and spiritually, it's possibly on the same level, on a certain level, it's on the same level as the future redemption. And the Rebbe explains as follows. He says like this, that it's possible to say, perhaps you can say that that this tremendous jump, because Pesach Sheini is also called Pesach. Pesach Rishon Hashem jumped over. Pesach Sheini is also called Pesach. So it's possible that the tremendous jump of Pesach Sheini is far greater than the jump of Pesach Rishon. Almost like when it says that when Mashiach comes, so it's going to be that the miracles of when Mashiach comes going to be far greater than the miracles of going out of Egypt. So the Rebbe says also going out Pesach Sheini is also far greater. What's the connection with saying that it's far greater? And the Rebbe says, he brings a medrash. The medrash says as follows, that the medrash says going out of Egypt, going out of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and all other galiyos, all other redemptions, is like, let's say you're in a dark room, it's very, very dark, and you light a candle. Wow, you see the light. So guess what? But it's only a candle. But the future redemption when Mashiach comes, it's going to be like the sun is shining. What's the difference between a sun and a candle? Because you light a candle at some point goes out. Depends how much oil, depends how much wax you have. But when the sun comes out, we know the sun lasts forever. Now, what's the connection? That's what the Medrash says. What does it mean spiritually? That going out of Egypt is like a candle, and when Mashiach comes, it can be like the sun. The Rebbe says very, very simple, that it's brought down in Chassidus, and it says that a candle is connected to Malchus of the Sfirot. When the Jewish people left Egypt, so what does it say? Upasach Hashem ala Pesach. Hashem jumped over the door. A door is also Malchus. So in other words, going out of Egypt is connected to Malchus. A candle is Malchus, so that's the connection between a candle and going out of Egypt. However, it says, when Mashiach comes, it says the light is going to be like the light of the sun. Why is the light going to be the light of the sun? Because it's going to be from the level of Zoh, the 6 midot. And because it's going to be like the light of the 6 midot, therefore it's like the light of the sun. So the Rebbe said, what did we just learn? That Pesach Sheini is which Sfira? It's not Malchus. The first Pesach is Malchus, that's like a candle. When Mashiach comes, it's going to be like the Shemesh, which is the Midas. We learned that Pesach Sheini is already the Midas HaYesoid, one of these 6 spheres of Zoh. So you see there's a direct connection between the Pesach Sheini and Mashiach coming, that they're both connected to Shemesh, as they're both connected to the idea of Zah, the Midos, and the Midah of Yesod. And the last chapter of this Maimer, the Rebbe finished up by saying is that when we celebrate Pesach Sheini, obviously celebrating Pesach Sheini on a physical level, we have to eat matzah, etc. And also when we celebrate Pesach Sheini, as we explained in the Maimer, we will usher in the final redemption. And the Rebbe says clearly that through our work, because it's a lot of work, and our effort to celebrate Pesach Sheini, we will usher in the future of redemption in a manner of what? Pesach, leaping. Now, the Medrash says clearly on the pasuk in Shir Hashirim, Koil Doidi, Hine Zeb Ba, Medaleg Alaharim, referring to when Mashiach comes. When Mashiach said to come, he's going to come leaping over on the mountain. But the Rebbe says that when it comes to Mashiach's coming the Rambam says a leaping is going to be not in a way of leaping where it's going to take a long time, but in a way of, the Rambam writes, miyad hein negolen. As soon as he comes, we're going to be redeemed right away. Mashiach will redeem us and take us to Eretz Yisrael, and the Rebbe finishes off literally now. That is the beautiful Hasidic discourse of the Rebbe. But I just want to reiterate again, the Rebbe says clearly that when we do our work and our effort to celebrate Pesach Sheini, what does that mean practically? Because Pesach Sheini, yes, we celebrate Pesach Sheini, we eat matzah. But what's the work and what's the effort of celebrating Pesach Sheini? The work and the effort of celebrating Pesach Sheini is, the avodah of Pesach Sheini is that everybody's accepted. Because when you're living on the level that you're doing Gesabcha, you're doing Asay Toiv, you're basically living on the Yesod, which is basically connecting to Hashem, on a practical level means that you love everybody. And as the Rebbe said clearly in the Maimer, because Yesod is connected to the world of Atzilus, so what does that mean, the world of Atzilus, you connect to everybody? You are busy with one thing only. We're busy bringing light into the world. We're busy bringing love into the world. We're busy bringing unity into the world. Anything that's not light, anything that's not unity, we don't deal with. And because we're going to elevate ourselves, and we're going to work hard and not be busy with Sur Meirad. That happened in Egypt. The only thing we're going to take from here is the energy, the fire. But our fire, we're going to be busy with one thing and one thing only, to be busy bringing in light. We will be zoicha, that we will be the cause of the great light to be revealed, and Hashem is going to reveal the great light, the light of Hashem, which will usher in Mashiach speedily in our days. Thanks so much for joining in to our Chassidus class here in Chabad. We're very, very blessed to have this class here at Chabad, and let's hope that, as we know it says, Baal Shem Tov says, that as we share the teachings of Mashiach, of Chassidus, Mashiach will come, Mashiach will come when we continue to share the beautiful words of the Rebbe, all about the light of Chassidus. Thank you, thank you.